thank you for coming today. Before we begin, I'd just like to share some background to the Transforming Tourism Initiative. And a lot is in the title. It's three very important words. The commitment to transform tourism and the initiative which brings together a range of organizations, people involved in community-based tourism, tour operators, academics, people in NGOs, people in social movements from across the world. And we had the privilege of officially or collectively beginning this at an absolutely wonderful gathering in Berlin. My goodness, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I'm feeling, I'm aging. Thanks very much to the Tourism Watch Office Center in Bread for the World, and above all, to the power and inspiration of Anchi. Thank you, Anchi, again. During the meeting, the first Transforming Tourism Initiative meeting, inaugural one, we launched, we developed, shared, and confirmed what we called the Berlin Declaration. And it's simple, but also it's deeply profound. I encourage anybody who has not had a chance to read it yet to go to the Transforming Tourism website, and you can download and read it at your leisure and enjoy the detail of the declaration. And also, as we'll hear later on, you can become part of that, supporting that process. At the beginning, I just want to say, as it says here on the screen, the transformation of our world is not possible without the transformation of tourism. You all know the key role that tourism plays in the global economy and in local economies. So if that is not transformed, our world is not transformed, and we need to do so. And so we recognize the specific inclusion of tourism in the 2030 agenda is an acknowledgement of the global significance of the sector, but at the same time, it creates an obligation to transform the current consumptive business model, which is incompatible with sustainable development. Now, we all know what that means, so what do? We have three core principles to enable the transforming our contributions to transforming tourism. First and central is human rights and self-determination of communities must be at the core, at the heart of every tourism development. We know that doesn't happen at present, but we know it must happen. This includes the right to meaningful participation and consultation, including free, prior, and informed consent on whether and to what extent and in what form tourism takes place. This is vital, as we've already learned from our day-to-day experiences, but so much that we've discussed in our series of seminars. If tourism is developed, it needs to seek a widespread and fair distribution of economic and social developments through the recipient communities, including improving local prosperity, quality of life, and social equity. Very important concepts here, which we all hold dearly and want to see part of practice, must be part of practice. And as we affirm in the end, tourism should be a positive and beneficial experience for travelers and hosts alike, in order to act as a force for mutual understanding, empathy, and respect. And we sincerely believe that these principles, the Berlin Declaration, are as a foundation for what we say in the title, to transform tourism. We have already, over the last year now, had a series of, I lose track, I think a number of events. You can see them all here. I think we're up to 6 or 7, maybe even 8. But these have been a deeply interesting exchange between people across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe on the core issues around transforming tourism. I won't read the titles out, but I will encourage you all to go to the Transforming Tourism website again, where the recordings of these are available for everyone to enjoy. And for everyone who attended them, I can assure you that you can go back again and enjoy again, and you will learn more each time. I will now briefly hand over to Anche to introduce a poll, a brief getting to know you each other poll for today's session. Anche, please.
Yes, as one of the goals of this seminars is also to exchange, to get to know each other. We would like to not only know where the speakers are coming from and where their expertise and experience comes from, but also to get a feedback from you. We have 120 people registered, so far 50 in this round. So we have prepared a very short poll. It's a Zoom poll, so you can just respond to the 3 questions that are in there, and I will then introduce to you what we know from the audience so far. So we have nearly half of the participants having an NGO background. We have a number of participants from university academic background, but also representatives from companies or from community-based tourism initiatives. When we are looking at the background, the continents where people are coming from, we see many participants from Asia and from Europe, but a warm welcome especially to those participants from the Americas. As we know, it's really early in Latin America and in North America, so a warm welcome to all of you, and also to the colleague from an African country. One content-related question, we wanted to know from you what you estimate in the next 3 years. The working conditions of women in tourism are getting much better, remain the same, worse, or get much worse. So there we see a quite optimistic perspective from our round. But also 1/3 of the participants who are concerned about worsening working conditions for women. I think this picture will be something that we all have in mind listening to these speakers today. And before giving back to Andy, I just wanted to write one question in the chat, which is when tourism recovers after COVID, hopefully when we are coming to this stage in the future, what do you want to change compared to the times before COVID? I would like you to take this question with you, have it in your mind when you're listening to the presentations. And if you feel you want to share something to this question, just use the chat and respond to it. I think it's always good to have a reflection in this moment of crisis that is guiding us out of this crisis and makes us a clear and strategic thinking where we need change to have a better tourism and better working conditions, particularly for women. With this, I'm handing over back to Andy.
So today, this webinar, this seminar has been basically majority organized by one of the Transforming Tourism Founder Initiative, Transforming Tourism Initiative founder members, which is Equality in Tourism. And it's a great privilege for us today that our moderator is the director of Equality in Tourism at Stroma Col. And so a warm welcome, Stroma, and thank you for all the collaboration to ensure this exciting seminar is progressing. You're a senior lecturer, as you know, in tourism at the University of Westminster here in London. And you've blended, not even just combined, your careers in action research, which is an important concept for me always, consultancy in tourism, gender, water and human rights. But also many, as people can know when they search you, many articles and books, and also you're a holder of the British Academy Knowledge of Frontiers grant. So a warm welcome, and over to you as our moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy, for that introduction, and thank you to all the participants who are attending at various different times throughout the day, and a particularly big thank you to our 4 speakers today. We've got speakers from Europe, we've got speakers from Asia, from India, from Indonesia, I'm going to introduce them just before they do each of their individual presentations. Angela is going to kick off, Dr. Angela Kalisch. She's chair of equality in tourism, and she's got 25 years experience in tourism as a tour operator in the Himalayas, as a lecturer, and also at Tourism Concern, where she developed an international tourism, fair trade in tourism strategy, an extremely important and groundbreaking piece of work. Gender politics has always been at the heart of what Angela, her work. And in her presentation today, she's going to explore job insecurity as part of a broken capitalist system, and how this adds not only to women's lack of respect and poor pay, but also to job insecurity. Angela's going to also offer us a message of hope by outlining mechanisms by which we can strengthen women's position. I'm over to you, Angela, for what looks like it's going to be a really fascinating presentation.
Thanks for inviting me to start off this really very important seminar. I'm really giving the background, hopefully, to what my other speaker colleagues are going to talk about. And I'm going to talk about the precarity, the precarious future, which women are facing, particularly now during and also post-COVID times. The tourism system is inherently linked to the capitalist neoliberal economic system currently determining global developments. And we often talk about tourism and its transformation as if it was a separate entity, but it's actually inherently linked with the economic system we're faced with. And that's why the analysis of tourism and its transformation needs to happen in the context of transforming the prevalent economic paradigm which fuels tourism. The capitalist neoliberal economic system focuses on supremacy of free trade and markets, shrinking the influence of the state and governments, deregulation, privatization, unlimited growth and profit. And neoliberalism's economic and philosophical influences are thus founded upon the convergence of two principal cultural beliefs: that the individual, competition, and free markets be granted supremacy over all else, that work, production, nature, and even time be measured in monetary terms. Tourism has largely been developed as a panacea, particularly in the global south, as a trade export item for countries to comply with IMF and World Bank conditionalities on debt repayments. Tourism has been, therefore, the key driver of globalization and privatization. Deregulation and assigning predominance to free markets, taking power away from governments, introduces volatility into the system and gives rise to boom and bust and financial crisis. Greed and the hunt for ever larger profits and power give rise to exploitation of humans and nature, encroaching on and degrading animal habitats, which is one of the causes for the current coronavirus pandemic, and climate change, with further pandemics predicted in future. Business strategists talk about VUCA, V-U-C-A. This is an acronym for volatile, V for volatile, U for uncertain, C for complex, and ambiguous. This is to describe a multipolar world. Volatility reflects the speed and turbulence of change. Agility is critical because strategic adjustments must be made continually. And we see this volatility mirrored in the tourism system. For example, in 2017, out of 7,000 travel agents and tour operators in the UK, 1,800, or 26%, had attracted the warning rating. 2,679 businesses in the travel industry had red flags over them, which indicates that they were experiencing significant levels of distress at risk of insolvency. This shows that even before COVID, the industry was struggling and it was not in a resilient position. And climate change now adds to this volatility. An unpredictable future for a business means that investments have to be quickly returned, giving rise to a quick-back industry. Volatility and agility are leading to precarity, precarious work and precarious lives. Precarity is defined in some quarters as a lack of security and predictability, which manifests as psychosocial deprivation. Flexibility is the core part of a conscious strategy, not only of corporate strategy, but also of state and government strategy, in collaboration with supranational financial institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank. And in the effort to transform precarious work, and particularly in tourism, this needs to be taken into account. Precarity is prevalent in all spheres of work, but particularly in many economies in the global south. The majority of work is non-core and on the periphery, based on activities of survival rather than work. Tourism work is particularly exposed to poor remuneration, lack of respect, esteem and standing, and absolutely hostile to trade union activity, because it needs to be flexible with seasonality, travel, and unsociable hours. The precarious nature of tourism and hospitality work is a contradiction to the aspiration of sustainable development goals in terms of decent work, secure livelihoods, equality, and human rights. The NGO Action Aid states that the neoliberal system serves both to exploit and exacerbate women's position of economic, social, and political exclusion, with those in the global south hit hardest, particularly migrant women at the intersections of racism, sexism, and colonialism. So let's have a look at what the post-COVID tourism trends are going to be like. According to the World Tourism and Travel Council in 2020, 4 macro trends are expected to lead the way through recovery and beyond. And I have added another one in terms of agility and flexibility in labor practices. So these 4 are demand evolution, health and hygiene, innovation and digitization, sustainability and agility. So in terms of the demand evolution, the World Travel and Tourism Council estimate that traveler preferences and behaviors have shifted toward the familiar, predictable, and trusted. Domestic and regional vacations and the outdoors will reign in the short term. Demand for homestays, Airbnb, and self-catering establishments, alongside accommodation where cheap is replaced by luxury, conscious travel, and cultural immersion, particularly among younger travelers, are growing. Destinations will need to develop robust health and hygiene protocols and strengthen health infrastructure where possible. This will add additional burdens on women in their stereotypical socially assigned role as cleaners and carers. So health and safety are going to be paramount in this new era. Many travel and tourism businesses will implement enhanced health screening measures. Technologies such as fever detection and facial recognition camera services are starting to be used to recognize employees and read their temperature before permitting entry to facilities. The question is, for unprotected workers, what happens to their salaries if they can't work, particularly non-core workers? And it's estimated that 69% of travelers cite cleanliness as a critical component of travel brands' crisis response. Under innovation and digitization, according to the CEO of travel company Virtuoso, the sector will focus on, quote, automating the predictable so it can humanize the exceptional. Digital inequalities, both between developed and developing nations, but also within countries, have been exacerbated by the fallout from COVID-19, enhancing the already existing divide. Only 15% of households in the least developed countries have access to internet at home, compared to 84% in developed countries. Households may not have reliable internet connectivity in many parts of the global south. Such an approach will be key for travel, particularly with the projected growth of community-based tourism by 10% before 2023. Growth which will likely to be enabled by online experiences, and women have a key role to play in community-based tourism. According to the WTTC, almost 73% of consumers state they are taking note of brands that are making a difference during COVID-19, showing that growing attention is being paid to sustainability. There is a heightened public awareness now of the environment, climate change, and wildlife markets and poaching. and businesses are facing growing scrutiny for both their environmental track record and their support for diversity and inclusion. The disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on ethnic and racial minority has heightened the urgency to tackle significant disparities as well as systemic discrimination. Civil society such as women's rights organizations and, for example, the newly created Black Travel Alliance will need to hold destinations accountable for equality, diversity and inclusion in the sector. In terms of labour regulations, the World Tourism and Travel Council suggests to strike a balance. Here again, we meet the word agility. According to the WTTC, agility must become the sector's ethos in this period of uncertainty. But they temper their enthusiasm for agility with a statement on establishing the right balance of protection and flexibility in labour regulations as essential to maximise employment opportunities within travel and tourism. And creating such a balance between flexibility and protection will require a consultative approach with both the private sector and unions. And this will be a challenge if the tourism sector and the hospitality sector is so hostile to trade unions. As part of the drive towards agility, outsourcing will remain a constant feature in the future. Offshore outsourcing, also referred to as business process outsourcing, is the process of having work done for a business using qualified staffing solutions from countries with lower labor costs. Outsourcing has invariably led to job losses and exploitation in terms of increased workloads, less favorable contractual arrangements, and reduced pay. And this has led to protests and strikes in some countries, with housekeepers and cleaners at the forefront of campaigns. In some cases, achieving victories, as recently in France at the Accor Ibis Batignolles Hotel in Paris. Here, through collective campaigning, they have achieved in getting a revaluation of their salary, reduced workloads, and paid overtime. So what is the impact of COVID-19 on gender equality in tourism? Well, we have to be aware that obviously there has been an enormous amount of struggle and unemployment because of the drop in tourism worldwide, and the Asia Pacific region is the biggest loser in that respect, with approximately 63.4 million jobs, but this is likely to increase. Women's jobs are 1.8 times more likely cut than men's jobs in that context. We have to deal with increased workloads and risk infection. So for those who are working in hospitality and tourism and customer service, for example, they're exposed to infection as well as increased cleaning of quotas and higher workloads. And women are overly represented in micro and small and medium-sized enterprises, and particularly in the informal sector, which is not protected by government support. Usually these businesses are not registered, are informal, and so this is another problem. Women-owned companies are struggling with limited access to finance. Apparently 80% of women's-owned businesses are not served or underserved by banks, and this is going to get worse with the fallout from COVID. They will be even more risk-averse. Women were already carrying at least 3 times the domestic and caring workload of men before the COVID outbreak. And now this has increased even more, with women being pushed back into households to look after children and relatives. And particularly for single parents, this is much worse, the majority of whom are women. And this has also increased mental health and gender-based violence issues which need to be dealt with. But one of the also most important developments is going to be displacement of jobs through automation. Around 180 million female jobs are at high risk of being displaced globally. And telecommunication and technology will be a growth industry and a key sector for job creation. However, women are vastly underrepresented in that sector. Only 22% of artificial intelligence professionals globally are female. And job displacement through automation will be a serious issue. Female workers face a higher risk of automation compared to male workers, 11% of the female workforce relative to 9% of the male workforce. And less well-educated and older female workers, as well as those in low-skilled clerical service and sales positions, are disproportionately exposed to automation. And COVID will increase this development of artificial intelligence in most sectors, particularly in tourism and hospitality, where automation has already started replacing human beings through robots and apps. An analysis by the Brookings Institution in Washington estimates that within accommodation and food services, there's a 73% potential for automation. These are also the sectors with predominantly a female workforce. So, what does this leave us for the future? How can we address this? Well, let's look at the mechanisms to strengthen women's rights and protection rather than precarity. Economists are now questioning the benefits of neoliberal capitalist policies. The Asian economic crisis in '97 and '98, the 2007 and '08 credit crash, and now the coronavirus pandemic are leading policymakers and analysts to reevaluate key ideological and economic strands of capitalist thinking, putting greater emphasis on human well-being and sustainability of the planet. Businesses need to be accountable for women's rights as part of human rights policies. We have seen earlier that travelers and people generally are now putting greater emphasis on looking at business strategies in terms of diversity and sustainability. Partnerships, inclusivity, participation, empowerment, and consultation are key pillars of stabilizing precarious conditions. Companies need to be required to commit themselves to transparent reporting to the public and show gender mainstreaming action plans across all sections of the business, including suppliers, franchises, and outsourced services, with short and long-term strategic timelines of clearly measured specific targets, indicators, and outcomes. A feminist analysis of an alternative economy opens up an exploration of the ethic of care and fairness in relation to women's rights in tourism, distributive justice, and a social solidarity economy, shifting to focus on human and planetary well-being. Recently, there has been an increase in investment funds with specifically focusing on investing in gender equality. Gender scores are included in investments or funds, and they require transparency and accountability in gender equality policies. And more very rich women billionaires actually are using their money for philanthropy and giving out money to charitable enterprises, such as, for example, I noticed earlier, Amazon, Joe Bezos' ex-wife, who's given out a massive amount, billions of money. So that needs to be looked at. Neoliberal policies reflected in precarious work and lives have generated grassroots mass mobilization and protests, a counter movement from below. And we have seen that they can yield success. In the face of rapid technological change and changes in employment patterns, particularly with increased automation and use of artificial intelligence, training and continuous development of capabilities and competencies is going to be imperative for women to be able to progress and consolidate their positions in work and society. Technology is developing fast, enabling remote learning through free open access models, opening up opportunities for women anywhere on the globe, including in remote locations. And last but not least, this means that connectivity and easy, affordable availability of technology have to be a priority for equitable access. Women need to be encouraged and enabled to gain access to areas in technology, such as artificial intelligence, where they are vastly underrepresented. And that is my contribution. Thank you very much. Now, it can be done with the right will and commitment, I believe.
Thank you very much indeed, Angela, for a very thorough look at the problems and some suggestions for the solutions. But our second speaker today is Ernest, Cañada, and he is the coordinator of Alba. Alba is an independent research centre which specialises in responsible tourism based in Barcelona, and they've done some really important work on gender and tourism at that centre. Ernest's PhD is in geography, and he's an associate professor now at the University of Barcelona. But he's also an expert member on the Barcelona City and Tourism Council. He's worked lots in Latin America, and the work that he's going to present today is going to explore precarity using examples from Spain and Latin America to ask why gender equality is key to our understanding of precariousness in tourism and how it affects women. Over to you, Ernest.
Muchísimas gracias, Stroma, por tu presentación. Quiero agradecer también a las compañeras de Transforming Tourism por la confianza, porque hoy pueda yo compartir con ustedes esta presentación. Y fundamentalmente lo que voy a hacer es una serie de reflexiones a partir del trabajo de investigación y de acompañamiento de distintos colectivos laborales, tanto en España como en diversos lugares de América Latina. Bien, mi presentación la querría centrar en tres aspectos. El primero es ofrecer una aproximación al concepto de precariedad laboral que contribuye a complementar lo que también nos contó Ángela. Después, por qué es tan frecuente en el turismo esta precariedad laboral. Y finalmente, cómo interacciona con la desigualdad por razones de género. ¿Cómo podemos entender entonces el concepto de precariedad? Y lo primero que uno se preguntaría es si esto es algo nuevo. El concepto es relativamente nuevo, pero sin embargo, cuando uno mira la historia del capitalismo, lo que ve es que estas expresiones de lo que hoy llamamos precariedad han sido la norma. Lo normal en la historia del capitalismo ha sido la precariedad. La excepción, tal vez, y con muchas comillas, se produjo durante la etapa del periodo de políticas keynesianas en algunos países del norte global y limitados a ellos, y también sustentado sobre el trabajo no remunerado de las mujeres. Por tanto, este periodo de excepción también habría que tomarlo con ciertas comillas. De esta manera, la pregunta es, bueno, ¿cómo analizamos la precariedad? ¿Cómo la entendemos? Habitualmente se habla de la precariedad en términos de temporalidad, con la variable temporalidad. Pero a todas luces esto es insuficiente. Nos sirve para contar duración de contratos, pero la realidad que pretende explicar la precariedad es mucho más compleja. En realidad, de lo que estamos hablando cuando hacemos referencia a la precariedad es más bien de un proceso histórico. Es el resultado histórico de dos dinámicas. Una que tiene que ver, como nos contaba antes Ángela, con los procesos de flexibilización de la fuerza de trabajo impuesto por las empresas en un contexto de globalización y competencia global, y por otro lado de las políticas neoliberales que han desregulado los mercados laborales, que han debilitado los sindicatos y que han impuesto marcos legales y de negociación colectiva que desprotegían a las personas trabajadoras. Este resultado de esos dos procesos ha dado lugar a la imposición de unas relaciones de poder que han terminado por fragilizar a las clases trabajadoras. Por eso, cuando hablamos de precariedad y de precariedad laboral, entendemos que más allá de la duración de los contratos, de lo que se trata es de entender el concepto desde una perspectiva multidimensional, a través de diversos indicadores que nos permitirían tratar de capturar cómo funciona esto que llamamos precariedad. Y esto tiene que ver con la inestabilidad y la incertidumbre en la duración de la contratación, pero también de cuándo se trabaja, el tiempo total que se hace, si tienes o no calendario laboral, cuánto dura tu jornada. También tiene que ver con la falta de protección social, tanto por mecanismos de legislación del Estado como por convenios. también con bajos salarios e inciertos y fluctuantes que nos condiciona a una situación de pobreza laboral, una degradación en las condiciones de trabajo que incrementan la exposición a situaciones de riesgo que pueden afectar sobre la salud de las trabajadoras y los trabajadores, y finalmente una débil capacidad de negociación individual o colectiva de las condiciones laborales y que por tanto supone una mayor situación de vulnerabilidad. Es por eso que la inseguridad se ha convertido en la mayor expresión de lo que llamamos precariedad. Una inseguridad que no es solamente laboral, sino que también afecta en la vida cotidiana de las personas trabajadoras. Quiero leerles el testimonio de una camarera de piso que entrevisté hace un tiempo, en el cual creo que ejemplifica de qué estamos hablando cuando hablamos de esta inseguridad asociada como precariedad laboral. Dice así: aun siendo una mujer trabajadora como soy, que soy meticulosa en mi trabajo y me gusta hacer bien las cosas, pues aun siendo así, siempre quieren más. Entras a las 7 de la mañana y son las 5 de la tarde y no has comido nada. Ahí ya te lo decían cuando llegabas por la mañana. Ni comer ni orinar. A tirar, venga. A tirar millas. Al colapso. Llegas al colapso. Yo cogí una baja laboral porque me daban ataques de ansiedad. Oye, que cojan a más personal, que contraten a más personal, que contraten a más mujeres. Ya no podemos trabajar más. En los hoteles es un colapso de trabajo y del número de habitaciones que tenemos que hacer. Les da igual que hagas jornada completa que media jornada, que tienes que ir corriendo y volando. Yo tenía 6 horas de trabajo y me acuerdo que nunca hacía las 6 horas, que me iba a las 4 o a las 5 de la tarde. Una locura. Ahora no quiero más hoteles. Por eso, habitualmente, cuando hablamos de precariedad laboral, hacemos referencia, Angie, por favor, si puedes cambiar la pantalla, hacemos referencia a esta imagen. La imagen que tiene historia es la imagen de una camarera de piso cuando trabajador inmigrante de origen polaco trabajando en Londres, cuando recibió la lista de las habitaciones que tenía que limpiar ese día. Y ella, que había sido ilustradora en Polonia, dibujó en un libro publicado por el sindicato United Here una ilustración de ese momento, de ese preciso momento. Y por eso, para mí, cuando hablamos de precariedad, estamos hablando de estos ojos, de los ojos del horror. En este contexto, deberíamos preguntarnos por qué la precariedad es tan común en el trabajo turístico. Y además de todas estas cosas que nos contaba Ángela, en torno a un contexto general de políticas neoliberales y de un capitalismo financiarizado sostenido por políticas de carácter neoliberal, habrían algunas razones que nos ayudan a entender mejor el contexto concreto de la actividad turística. Algunas tienen que ver con el propio funcionamiento de la actividad, del turismo. Esto tiene que ver, por ejemplo, con las oscilaciones en el tiempo de la demanda de trabajo. No es lo mismo cuando es temporada alta que es cuando temporada baja. No es lo mismo el fin de semana que entre semana. No es lo mismo en la mañana primera hora cuando los huéspedes van a buscar el desayuno que a media mañana. Es decir, la actividad turística tiene oscilaciones muy fuertes en la demanda de trabajo y eso hace que las empresas busquen cómo reducir los costes laborales teniendo trabajadoras contratadas solamente una parte del tiempo cuando ellos les hacen falta. O también la dificultad que existe de trasladarse buscando los mejores costes laborales. El turismo se basa fundamentalmente en vender algo que no es suyo. Un cliente, un huésped, no va a un hotel, a una habitación de hotel, porque sea fantástico. Va porque en ese lugar ocurren cosas y puede hacer cosas. Por tanto, esto implica unos costes y lo que las empresas buscan es ahí donde se produce esta posibilidad de optimizar las actividades que desarrolla, ahí precisamente lo que busca es cómo reducir los costes laborales. Además, es una actividad que aunque se haga mal, se puede hacer sin mucha formación y eso hace que haya mucha gente dispuesta a hacer el trabajo con niveles bajos de formación y eso permite que las empresas puedan bajar los salarios. También hemos vivido, en especial desde la crisis financiera global de 2008, una serie de cambios que han provocado una serie de transformaciones en la actividad turística. El fortalecimiento de las economías de plataforma que han desregulado el trabajo y han generado más competencia, los procesos de financiarización, de dependencia cada vez mayor, en especial en el sector hotelero y de agencias de viajes, del capital financiero, con compromisos a muy corto plazo para recuperar su inversión, y eso ha endurecido y mucho las relaciones laborales y la presión por reducir los costes laborales, o las dinámicas de digitalización y sustitución del trabajo o de incremento de los mecanismos de control. Y por último, también de todo eso, una desigualdad en términos de poder, que es lo que permite que las empresas hagan lo que quieran cuando puedan hacerlo. En este contexto de precarización creciente y extendida en la actividad turística, en una actividad tan profundamente feminizada como es el turismo, habría que preguntarse cuáles son las claves de esta relación. Fundamentalmente, y este es un trabajo que hemos desarrollado en Alba Sud, tanto con mi compañera Daniela Moreno como con otras compañeras del equipo, Carla Iscara y otras de las compañeras investigadoras, en esta dinámica lo que se produce fundamentalmente es un proceso de naturalización de las desigualdades por razones de género, y sobre esa base la industria turística puede permitirse pagar salarios más bajos, ofrecer jornadas a tiempo parcial, etc. E incluso organismos como la Organización Mundial del Turismo, en lugar de reconocer eso como un problema de precariedad, decir que gracias a estas ofertas que hace la industria turística, las mujeres pueden acceder al empleo asalariado sin desatender sus responsabilidades de cuidado, es decir, naturalizando las desigualdades de género. Y ahí se entrecruzan desigualdades de género con las desigualdades provocadas en el trabajo por las políticas de flexibilización y reducción de costes laborales. Todo esto acaba traduciéndose, y voy ya con la última lámina, acaba traduciéndose en un proceso de precarización que afecta fundamentalmente a las trabajadoras, a las mujeres. En este caso, hemos podido comprobar, y en especial a través del trabajo de camareras de piso, tanto en España como en la República Dominicana, en los resorts todo incluido, unas condiciones de empleo precarias que afectan fundamentalmente a una parte sustancial de sus plantillas formada por mujeres en determinados puestos de trabajo asociados fundamentalmente a una extensión de lo que se ha querido considerar como un trabajo en el ámbito reproductivo que es asociado por esta naturalización de las desigualdades a las mujeres. En este contexto vemos cómo se produce una situación de suelo pegajoso, pero que llamamos sticky floor, que tiene que ver con esta dificultad de las mujeres de poder salir, de ascender de sus trabajos más precarios, pero también de un crecimiento de la pobreza laboral, no saliendo de esos trabajos y con trabajos a tiempo parcial, a tiempo temporal, acaban generando también empleos que generan inseguridad y la imposibilidad de dotarse de independencia, que además cuando se está en el trabajo son trabajos que se realizan de una forma muy intensa, porque las empresas lo que están buscando es, con una flexibilización de la mano de obra, provocar que estas trabajadoras cuando estén trabajen al máximo, y esto tiene una situación de enorme impacto, que además esto se deriva en un contexto de inseguridad creciente por no saber nunca cuánto tiempo van a trabajar, cuánto va a durar su jornada, hasta qué hora van a tener que trabajar, en qué condiciones, cuánto tiempo les durará su trabajo, y eso dificulta también las posibilidades de planificar su vida a medio y largo plazo, pero también su vida inmediata. Y eso hay que sumarle la situación de doble presencia o doble jornada que tienen que desarrollar las mujeres, no solamente en el ámbito del empleo, sino en sus responsabilidades en el ámbito reproductivo, en una carga desigual con los hombres. En este contexto, finalmente, todo esto acaba generando una dinámica que tiene efectos directos sobre la salud tanto física como psíquica, que afecta de una forma muy profunda a las trabajadoras mujeres. En este contexto es que cuando hablamos de precariedad y precariedad en el turismo hay que poner el acento, hay que poner la mirada fundamentalmente en su expresión final como expresión de mayor desigualdad, que acaba siendo la salud. Una salud que crecientemente deteriorada, que requiere de medicación diaria para poder sostener el trabajo. Y esto es algo que hemos podido comprobar tanto en dos países de habla hispana, como es la República Dominicana como España, en términos de una salud cada vez más deteriorada. Con esto termino y agradecerles de nuevo su atención. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed, Ernest. It's a breathtaking, some of the stories that you have collected, some of the facts that you present about the situation for women. Really very, very shocking. Almost makes me speechless, but I won't be, because I should introduce our third speaker. Our third speaker is Khawla Zainab, and she's a research associate for IT for Change, which is an organisation in India. And Khawla works with women workers in agriculture, in garment factories, and also in the beauty industry. And what she's going to present for us today is exploring women in the Indian gig economy, and relating how the Indian gig economy in the beauty industry mirrors the issues that we're talking about with women's work in the tourism economy. Khawla's had done some very interesting jobs in her life, and it would be wonderful to know more about the work that she's done with survivors of violence in Mumbai, but I'm not sure we're going to have time for that part of it today. But I'm really interested to hear more about the gig economy in India. Over to you, Khawla.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm pleased to be here. Just to start off, I wanted to draw attention to some of the common themes that plague women's work across tourism, as well as what we know as gig work. One of it is feminization, and feminization in both senses of the word, that there is an increase in women's work participation in certain jobs that are reserved for them, but also feminization in terms of informalization or precarization, which was so nicely elucidated right before my piece. Another tendency is of occupational segregation, that we see women are concentrated not only in low-end jobs, but also in jobs which have historically been viewed as feminized. And flowing from that is the undervaluation and invisibilization of women's labor. Women are pushed and limited to economic activities that are seen as an extension of their primary role as caregivers, owing to the sexual division of labor. So whether it's hospitality or caring in tourism, or domestic work or beauty services in the gig economy. The other common or parallel that I see is when we see the totalizing tendencies or effects of platformization in both cases. Platforms tend to overtake a sector or an economic occupation by way of absorbing all local players, because they rely, or their model is hinged on network effects. So they need to expand and absorb more and more actors within the ecosystem, leaving making it very difficult to exist as an independent actor. And this, of course, disproportionately affects those who already have small businesses or have lower social capital to expand their businesses. So it creates a sort of take it or leave it situation. Of course, high rates of commission, which is reflective of the extractive tendencies of platforms, whether it's Airbnb or Urban Company, as we will see. And lastly, data as a centralizing and disciplining tool. So rather than having a human managerial layer, workforce management and labor practices are governed by opaque algorithms which are not accountable to the workers. Indeed, digital labor platforms have been the biggest development or transformations in the world of work since the financial crisis of 2008. Digital platforms will have you believe that they are mere intermediaries or aggregators, simply matching demand and supply in the market. But upon closer examination, you find a much more insidious reality where not only do digital labor platforms change the mode of production, they change the organization of value chains, but they also distort markets by creating an anti-competitive environment. They escape labor regulations, they escape taxation, and but still, technically put, digital labor platforms are a digital interface that mediate opportunities to work through technology. And yeah, I mean, initially there was some scope that people, I mean, there still is to imagine platform work by way of a sharing economy or a solidarity economy, but clearly that has not been the predominant tendency of digitalization in the world of work. In fact, we have seen concentration and monopolization of technology. When we look at women in the gig economy, the first way to, the straightforward way to think about it is to think about their representation, their participation. And here again, one of the key defining features is a high degree of occupational segregation, both in India and the rest of the world. For example, in the UK, on the Hassel platform, which provides cleaning services, 86.5% of workers are women, while on food delivery platform Deliveroo and the private transport platform Uber, 94 and 95% respectively are men. So here again, we see that what kinds of jobs in the digital economy are reserved for women do reflect the typical sexual division of labor paradigm that we see under capitalist production. Secondly, representation of women. This is interesting because when we think about informalization, it is there's kind of a dichotomy that yes, the working conditions are poor, but it does tend to attract more and more vulnerable groups of people, including women, into its arena. And some projections, for instance, that were made for Europe, that in a couple of years, the platform economy will be driven increasingly by demographics that have played a mostly supporting role to date in economic participation, which includes women, the elderly, and an emerging middle class. Overall data on demographics of gig workers is a little bit patchy, but we do know some trends for different regions. We know that women are much less likely than men to work regularly in the gig economy. They work part-time instead, and this again is connected to their the role of caregivers that is assigned to them. And women also tend to exit the platform economy sooner than men, and their work is mediated and shaped by norms around gender that emerge out of the sexual division of labor. This has already been pointed out today, but women have a very low share in the advanced technology jobs, the non-routine cognitive tasks that are in demand in the digital economy, where employment expansion and real wage increase is much faster. To look closely at what are the conditions of women's work in the gig economy, I'm sharing my work with beauty workers in India on this big platform called Urban Company. Urban Company is a two-sided platform marketplace which provides home-based services ranging from cleaning, home installations, repairs, carpentry, to salon services and massages. It describes the workers providing these services as service professionals. Its application works by linking these workers to customer leads. A little bit about Urban Company's model. It earns its revenues primarily through a commission model in which these service professionals or workers who sell their service through the platform pay the company a fixed fraction of the payment received upon accepting a booking. In 2020, the beauty and wellness vertical alone accounted for around 55% of the yearly revenue of Urban Company. In fact, the profits that it has enabled Urban Company to earn and produce has allowed Urban Company to expand internationally and also to claim the highest share of the on-demand at-home beauty services market. About the labor force in beauty and service industry, it's worth noting that over half of the workforce in this sector is constituted by women. And in addition to that, most of these women are migrant women from certain states in the country. And one of the most pertinent social realities of India, apart from being in the global value chain, being in the global south, but even contextually, India is inherently a deeply hierarchical society, and certain kinds of jobs are reserved for women, but even within that, women who come from a certain community background or identity. So within beauty and wellness, for instance, hair cutting is a stigmatized occupation which is reserved for certain caste groups that are placed lower in the social hierarchy. All of these things together, women from certain states who are migrants, who come from a certain caste group, define the social landscape of beauty work and who this labor and worker constituency is in this sector. When we look at some empirical examination of who these workers are, these women are largely young. The average age of a beauty worker in this sector is 25 to 34 years. So roughly about 30 years of age. So it's a very young workforce, and not all of them are married. So it also, there is a difference in the economic situation also in terms of how household income is distributed, what is the role and responsibility of the woman in the household. 72% of these women were high school graduates, and 21% went to college, which is to say that even though these women are not highly educated, there is some basic level of education that they have access to some degree. And again, in keeping with how certain occupations are assigned to certain social groups, we also find that even before Urban Company and other platforms in beauty and wellness became the predominant platform to take up for kind of access work opportunities, these women were still in the same sector, even if they were working in physical beauty parlors or salons. The average reported monthly income by these workers is 20 to 40,000 INR. And this is actually different from the official average income that the platform reports its workers are able to earn. I will be sharing a few insights from some of my own interviews that I have done with women in this sector. In terms of what are the conditions of work, there is an increasingly high commission rate that is extracted by the platform that comes straight out of the workers' earnings. There has been, at the time of joining, the commission rate was allowed the workers to take 60% of the gross income home with them, but that has declined over time from 40% on paying commission to even more, like over 50%. Income instability is also a defining feature, which was in fact worsened by the pandemic. Urban Company claims that women are making 50,000 INR. However, during the pandemic, incomes plummeted before completely halting. And the platform did not provide any roadmap as to what their future would look like, what kind of work allocations would be made, or what kind of relationship the platform would continue to have with the workers. When the demand dried up, the workers were completely left in the lurch. And since I mentioned a lot of these women are migrant women, they were forced to go back home. And the impetus to migrate in the first place is very gendered in the case of these women. It's not always the typical factors of the pull factors of the market that drive migrant women workers. So kind of going back home has certain other consequences as well, which are very gendered. Also, during the pandemic, it was seen that the platform refused to take any responsibility to bear the extra costs that were being incurred on account of the public health situation. Workers were asked to bear the costs of safety equipment on their own, which, coupled with the exacting commission fees, created a big dent in their already deteriorating income. One worker pointed out that the cost of traveling to the client was restricted to using ride-hailing services, which themselves are a more expensive mode of transportation, and that further depleted the amount that they were able to take back home with them. Precarity, of course, the whole business model is based on utilizing the surplus labor force, luring them in with certain incentives at the start, of which flexibility, I assume, is one of the biggest things that is used to attract workers. However, over time, both earnings decline and the income stability also is made worse. And there is a heightened social security burden that is borne disproportionately by workers, including market risks and increasing costs. Disposability and replaceability of workers. Here I've shared a quote from an interview that I had with a worker, where she said, when her and some of her colleagues took a complaint to their manager, the manager said that, at first he was irritated that they were complaining about something, and then he said, "We don't need you, we will find many others." So their grievance was not even entertained. So in the gig economy, it's not so much the need for skilled workers, but for a large number of workers. This precarity has specific gendered consequences, especially for women in the beauty sector, which includes migrant women, where migration, apart from holding an economic promise or promise of economic security or emancipation in some shape or form, also has certain connotations of freedom or for being independent in some sense. Lastly, one of the distinct aspects of working on platforms is that of the use of data and algorithm to discipline and manage the workforce. The commissions that are charged off the workers' fee are operationalized through a system of credit balances. Workers need a minimum level of credits to respond to customer leads, and conversely, responding to leads and successfully rendering the service earns workers credit points. Customer leads are allocated to workers by the algorithm with no transparency as to the basis of such allocation. Criteria for number of gigs per workers is not known. Both of these calculations are not known and are unknowable to the workers. Urban Company also offers deep discounts to customers during festivals, and the reduction in prices of services at this time is squeezed from the workers' earnings. Lower ratings automatically trigger a retraining process, irrespective of whether or not low ratings were justified in the workplace. Similarly, while customers are allowed to review the service providers are not allowed to review the customers, which can act as a signal for other workers whether to take up a certain gig or not. Here again, I've shared a quote from one of my interactions with the workers, where this worker shared that she does not know how the company decides job allocation for different workers and why someone gets more work over others. They just have to accept the tasks that the app sends, because that itself is unpredictable. Lastly, I want to close with talking about India's very large and distressing migrant crisis that took place in around early March 2020 and went on for a month or so. Due to the sudden lockdown that was imposed by the government to curb the spread of the virus, a lot of migrant workers were left in the lurch. They did not have work in the places, in the cities where they had migrated to, and so they were forced to go back home. And in this, in this, the representation of the migrant worker was largely male. And here again, we see that there is there are worker constituencies, women worker constituencies that migrate for work, and they have specific gendered motivations for doing so. They have specific experiences that are gendered, yet the understanding of the migrant crisis was largely overshadowed by through the image of the male worker. Where women were mentioned, they were seen through the lens of motherhood and wifehood, talking about the wives of the migrant workers who were returning back with their husbands, or what were their specific challenges related to health, reproductive health, etc., but not so much about women's labor or women as migrant workers. And this probably has to do with the lopsidedness of migration theories as well, where the focus has been on push factors of poverty and unemployment to explain or understand migration of workers, whereas there are certain unique factors that propel women to migrate, factors that are beyond marriage, factors like seeking economic opportunity, leading an independent life, etc.
Thank you very much indeed, Khawla. Absolutely fascinating, and some really important points about platformization and how algorithms are going to be managing labour more and more. I also thought that the point about intersectionality was really critical to many of the discussions. We're running short on time, so I would like to introduce our last but very definitely not least speaker, Leah, who is here joining us from Women in Tourism in Indonesia, an organisation that brings together women that work and are activists in tourism in Indonesia. And Leah in particular is the founder of an organisation, SembaluNina, which is a women's organisation dedicated to increasing women's leadership opportunities. She's also the leader of the director of the local destination management organisation on Lombok. Leah's going to talk to us today about how the halt created by COVID-19 has given them the possibility to work with women on leadership roles and on their recovery plans, and also to consider the cross-cutting issues which occur on Lombok, as in many islands in Indonesia, which I know well: water, waste and tourism. So over to you, Leah, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I would like to start by saying that thank you so much, Angela, that you started this webinar by, elegantly elaborate the the theories and the development discourse. And I very much would like to say that is exactly the reason why I chose to work where I'm working right now and do what I do now, because I firmly believe that change, like real changes, can only be made locally. And to have a greater impact, networking and building collaboration such as this one, that is how to go about it. That's how to do it. So thank you so very much for the opportunity, Stroma. I'm here to represent Women in Tourism Indonesia. I was lucky that I was invited to one of their webinar a while ago. And now that I'm sitting here, I am very, very excited that this endeavor now has become a global network. So now that I have understand better from the previous talk about what precarity actually means, I would like to say that the problem that COVID-19 presents in a woman's life has, I think, extend the meaning of precarity, because when we zoom into local size or local context, the shape of precarity might vary from one place to another. So I titled my today's presentation, Transforming into Quality Tourism, because that's exactly what we are trying to do. And we are seriously trying to take a different perspective on COVID-19, because now the issue that's being promulgated here, especially in the developing countries, that COVID-19 is a disaster. You know, it's a pandemic. It's something that we need to be fear of. So where I'm at, we are trying to look at it from different angles, from different perspective, that we are introducing a new way of looking at it. This is a chance, this is an opportunity, you know, that a help that is provided by COVID-19, we could utilize it to transform what have been a mismanagement, I would call it, in tourism development in my place into quality tourism. So yes, we are hoping to use COVID-19 as a momentum that we cannot afford to miss. This is my the woman that I am working with. Not very many of us. Right now there are 31, but I think almost 34% of us that are actively involved for several reasons. And as Stroma have introduced, we are trying to enable more and more women to be to take leadership roles in the local development. Here are several details of who we are and what we do. So here are the goals and projects. What are our goals? When we came with the idea of establishing this woman community, it was starting from a little small discussion, more like a gossip, you know, talking about why I have no water in my toilet, no water in my kitchen, and some other worries. And then we started to think, yeah, and that problem, we have water problem, we have waste problem, and then now we have tourism coming into the village, and then there are people singing, karaokeing until, you know, midnight and disturbing our children's sleeps. What can we do about it? Because man doesn't seem to be disturbed by all these things. So starting from those moments, we started to try to figure out how we are going to make changes. So these are the goals that we wanted more women taking on leadership roles. Right now, the understanding of gender equality are not shared from top to bottom. As it goes down, the understanding, I think, is being corrupted in a way, maybe lack of understanding from the individual leaders themselves, or maybe some other reasons that I do not understand. So what happened now is even there are some opportunities where women can also involve, but apart from that first problem, second problem is also we are unable to use that opportunity to voice our own needs in a way that could make a substantial or significant changes. And we are also right now trying to promote to the government to create Sembalun, to take Sembalun as a center for sustainable tourism development as some kind of pilot project. Where I live, there is also this Mount Rinjani, who is also now is being promoted to the ministry to be taken as a pilot project as well for international trekking management, trekking destination. Apart from that, we are also trying to science mainstreaming, not only gender mainstreaming, because the biggest problem in tourism development in our area is that science is not taken seriously. Maybe are you able to bold for me to say that, but I haven't seen any policies or programs that is based on science so far. So most of the policies and programs are being built based on assumptions, which is we are experiencing the results right now, and that cannot happen for any longer. And we are trying to also build system for cross-boundary issues, and these are acute because I've been living in the area in the last 10 years, and I can see very clearly how our environmental degradation is happening in days. And at the same time, we also experiencing social disintegration that is perpetuating the environmental degradation. And our concept and strategies, we developed a concept we called Sembalun ecosystem. So this district has is divided into 6 villages. 6 villages have six heads who are working independently, supported with quite a big amount of fund from the government every year. So this funding have created some kind of a quite strong ego sectoral, which refuses everyone's, including our intervention, not maybe intervention per se, even just an invitation for a discussion. So we are introducing the Sembalun ecosystem concept for 3 cross-boundary issues: water, waste, and tourism, to enable them to see that these 3 issues cannot be overcome independently. Because even though we are divided into 6 villages, but we are one ecosystem. And so these are the strategies. We mainly work through community engagement, through collaboration. And right now we are working on at least 5 or 6 research in collaboration with several other institutions, including academic. And as I said before, that we are localizing our move in these small areas as a pilot project, hoping that it could be replicated somewhere else in the near future. And these are our achievements so far. I am very proud to say that we have managed to help the East Lombok government to finally agree on establishing the destination management organization. And this is the first DMO, grassroots DMO in Indonesia. And it is being initiated by a woman organization. So I'm taking I'm very proud of this one. Yeah, and for waste, we previously proposed another concept on the Sembalun ecosystem, but then we have gotten several rejections from the head of the villages, and we didn't have any other choice but to really try to make several adjustments. So now we are promoting gender-based waste management, and we are focusing only on tourism waste for the moment until they see it's working. And then after that, we are going to go back to them and approach them again. And for water, among these 3, water is the most highly politicized issue in the village, because it involves a big amount of funding. For example, right now, there are so many other people coming into the area because Sembalun has several status attached to it, including the National Tourism Strategic Area. With all these statuses come programs and policies and budget implications. It means that with the absence of master plan in the area for Sembalun, Sembalun has become some kind of battlefield for programs and concepts and ideas, because there's no map that will guide people where to go or what to do. Everyone comes to the place with their own ideas and rules even. So when we identify that there's quite a big amount of fund for a certain government project in the area, we approach the government and promote to them that let's use PES, payment for ecosystem services, to overcome our water problem. Right now, the use of water by industry, it has no financial implications because there's no system in place. So everyone, the community and now tourism industry come into the village trying to find their own solutions. And right now, the easiest solutions for water problem is drilling. Is it bore? Yeah. So in the last 3 years, our waterbed has decreased down to 50 meters. 3 years ago, when the first bore was made, the waterbed was 8 to 10 meters, and within 3 years, it's already down to 15 meters. And the implication is so clear. Right now, we have lost a lot of water springs, and 100 meters from my house, there's this big hotel who has pools in there. The environmental injustice is so clear because 100 meters from there, I have to buy water for everything. Yes, and I see Stroma smiling because it's happening everywhere. It's not unique to us. That's why we need to do something real about it. And there it is. Our challenges. I would say gender misconception is our first challenges. I read in the comment only recently, someone said that there is this, she or he sees a competition between male and female guide. And this is exactly what happened here. When we started to speak up, because all these years, we women are so used to not asking, not saying nothing, just to accept what the society, where the society putting us at. And once someone is talking and started to mobilize other women to start speaking up, a lot of people think, even women, discrediting another woman, this is the saddest part, saying that you're trying to take the men's role, you see? So this gender misconception, I think, is our biggest hurdle so far. And this misconception is not only in the grassroots level, but also at every level of the government. And this is one of my biggest challenge. And also combined with patriarch leadership, I guess these two are twins. So not only that they have that misconception, we are also so far, some leaders, some people make us feel welcome at the discussion table. But we understand that whatever result of that discussion will be unknown later, because I would say maybe because we're women, we are not, they're not taking us very seriously. That's why I guess for us women, we need to be more and more persistent in our effort to do the same thing as what men is trying to do because of these two things here. And the third one is stigma, maybe more accurately, I would say trust. I'm sure all of you have worked in Southeast Asia, I think have things in common, that there's mistrust between NGOs, normally local NGOs, with the government. And so a lot of our work is also hindered by this stigmatization of NGO workers who have these impressions that when there's a problem, you will go and start criticizing the government, and then corruption is so common that you're just getting paid or whatever, and then problem solved. So we're also getting this treatment that a lot of people will take us as that kind of social workers or activists maybe. And here, very, very weak science to policy, almost none. A lot of grassroots movement, as other grassroots movement in the world, I think SembaluNina, we are also the result or the response of the incompetency of our leaders. I'm afraid to say that it's pretty sensitive, but that's the reality. Theoretically, I learned that when there are more organizations like us, it shows that the system is weak. So I'm waiting for the time when we are no longer needed. So we established ourselves in July 30, 2020, and since then we have been working pretty hard. In less than a year, we have achieved our three biggest goals. One now, DMO. And the first thing that we did was the problem analysis. And these are the findings that we found early on in our analysis, that our biggest problem is egosexual and lack of coordination because of this ego. And again, poor planning because no coordination again. As we know that tourism is a multi-stakeholder, is a multidiscipline sector. One cannot work alone. And with no coordination, the result is devastating. And coupled with incompetency, there are a lot of political positions. Our leaders changes like maybe 3-4 times in a year. And you won't be surprised to see, someone with maybe technical competency to lead a law-related office or something. So I would not say that there are some people who are very fast learner and they adjust very well with their new environment, but most of them taking their political position as such. And that is very, very hard for us. And we went to a stakeholder analysis. We tried to find who are the people that we could work with to advance our agenda, and who are the people that we should avoid for now and come back to later. And based on that, we collect these people, and then we develop a very strong collaboration right now. And we create this pentahelix plus destination management organization, and then now we are ready to work. And just building strategies. We have Sembalu ecosystem still with partnership. Do I still have time? Okay, yeah. Yes, so these are several of our close partnership. We are working very closely with Geopark Rinjani, and there are some friends from Sembalu 7 summits and some from the academic world. Here, I think I'm just going to touch on number 2, because this one is the most pressing issues for us right now. So first one, I mentioned about it earlier, gender mainstreaming, but not only that, because right now we have to really more zooming in into gender segregated data, because without it, we cannot go on continuing to promote gender budgeting. So we are also working on this one right now, and in a couple of days, we're going to have this one big workshop. We're inviting the Ministry of Women and Children Protection, who come to talk about this, and yeah, I'm very, very positive. So I guess that's all from me. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Leah. It's really exciting and interesting to have somebody who's on the ground, working with women and able to explore the real life problems that women face. We won't get into the water thing, because otherwise I will be here all afternoon. I want to thank once again all our brilliant speakers for this afternoon.
Well, we had an early question to Ernest at the beginning, which translated is what can be the alternatives to confront the precariousness, and inequality, and looking at the contrast between maybe Latin America and Europe. A small question, but also there was a retort at the end: is it just with secure contracts? Question mark. So that was a very important question to Ernest. And as you may all be able to see in the chat itself, there was a question from Joythri, basically on the issue to do with in India. We have seen the DMO is not often a very effective management mechanism. Could you please explain how this will be functioning and its role in tourism management? I think that's mainly to Leah. And Angela is asking Leah as well, very popular. What do you mean by social disintegration leading to environmental disintegration? Please elaborate. And apart from that, it's plaudits and praise, including for myself, for astounding presentations, really.
So perhaps we can take the question to Ernest first.
Sí, muchas gracias. Yo creo que no hay fórmulas mágicas, no hay recetas que puedan servir para todos los contextos. Lo que es fundamental es intervenir a distintos ámbitos. Hay un ámbito fundamental que es el de la propia empresa, y eso no pasa que por otra relación que por fortalecer la capacidad de organización de las propias trabajadoras para defender sus derechos en ese contexto. Y eso puede ser a través de las estructuras sindicales o a través de formas renovadas de organización colectiva. Y a un segundo nivel hay que introducir cambios en el marco legislativo local, nacional e internacional. Entonces yo creo que ahí es donde hacen falta las alianzas entre organizaciones de trabajadoras y trabajadores con espacios más amplios de carácter político que permitan esos cambios de marcos legislativos que generen entornos de mayor protección. Pero no creo que pueden haber fórmulas mágicas que digan cómo deben ser, pues como si fuera un problema de que no hubiéramos descubierto algo que hacía falta que nos diéramos cuenta. Es la vieja fórmula de toda la vida que ante relaciones de poder desiguales hay que fortalecer a los colectivos trabajadores para incrementar su poder. No hay otro mecanismo.
Thank you, Ernest. Legislation, unionisation, more power to the workers is definitely some parts of the answers. And I'm sure in our discussions in the breakout rooms, we will have an opportunity to look at some further answers. But before we do so, can Leia please just elaborate in answer to the questions that were to the group? One was about social disintegration and the other was about how the DMO is going to work.
Yep. Thank you for both questions. Very, very interesting questions. First one, I think I would like to address Gayatri first. I understand you doubt the concept of DMO because so far in Indonesia, DMO has been tried since 2014 or 15, but that's why when I introduced DMO, I said this is the first grassroots initiated DMO in Indonesia. So this concept has been generated in the tourism ministry in 2011, and it was being introduced in 10 big destinations in 2013 and 14. So it was pretty much a top-down approach to it. So, and that is why it inherits the culture, the cultural management and working culture of the government into the DMO. So I'll take an example of Borobudur DMO, the big temple on Java Island. So how it works is the DMO is set up by the ministry, and then the DMO itself only has the director and secretary and treasurer. And then apart from that, the LWG, the local working groups, who consist of the, for example, the artisans, the drivers, and so on. So it's pretty much focusing on the product or the economic aspect of the destination. While the concept that I am and my friends trying to develop is that the grassroots initiative DMO, we are consist of the local people because we understand our problem better than anyone else. And we don't want any intervention in terms of projects and programs, but we are legalized by the regency, by the Bupati, the head of the regency. That means that we are semi-structural. We can access the regional budget, but we are independent in our programs development. So in this DMO, we are focusing on the supply side of tourism. And we are also moderating moderating the policies and programs from all the other stakeholders that are working in the area, hoping that we could provide some kind of roadmap for the development into a more sustainable development. I hope my answer could answer your question. And to the second one, how is it social disintegration relate to environmental degradation? So what happened in this place is that it used to be in one district, there used to be only 2 villages. And as the government decided to divide it into more villages, the new head of the village understand this move as as an independent approach in everything. So water and waste and tourism, which are cross-boundary issues, when they are taken when they are solved independently, it does not work. So let's take water, for example. This is dangerous for Stroma. So what happened before was when there were only 2 villages, there was one integrated water system distribution for the entire place. So when the other villages were added in that place, the new villages cut the piping system, saying that, oh, we want to take care of our own water problem. We don't want to cooperate with you. We don't want to have, we don't want to attach into your system. So what happened then was each village, 6 of them, trying to find new resources, new sources of water. So one village could use up to 10 water springs. It means when all the water springs in the ecosystem is being piped into houses and now hotels, we lost our river. There's also no water for irrigation at the rice field. What happened then? The farmers started to dig boreholes, and that's where all this uncertainty happens, when all this danger, I would say, now happen.
Thank you so much for your time.